to episode 79 of the DesignFreaks podcast. Hi, I'm Clarita. I'm your host. This is a show about record covers, graphic design, music history, stories behind the record sleeves you've seen, and the freaks from the biz. Yeah, so this is a remix of episode 30 from way back in March of 2021, and it's the Julian House episode. So it's on British graphic designer and musician Julian House. He worked with Broadcast, Stereolab, other agencies. I go over his other work in this episode, but there's a couple reasons I wanted to remix and re-release this episode now. Julian House is one of my favorite, most inspiring graphic designers of all time, and I really wanted there to be an episode with visuals. When this episode was originally produced, my podcast was audio only. So I wanted to go back and offer this up with visuals now that I'm on the YouTubes. Also, it's been announced recently that Broadcast will present 2 new albums for 2024, unbelievably. But I do talk about in this episode, you'll hear when I quote James Cargill from Broadcast, sort of talking about how he was painfully going over all these demo tapes and how there was a new album in the works, but there was no telling back then when that was going to happen. Well, the time is here. Warp Records has announced a pair of Broadcast demo collections, saying they will be the final releases from the duo. So first, available May 3rd, 2024 is Spell Blanket, and that's collected demos from 2006 to 2009. And I'm reading from broadcast.warp.net. Spell Blanket comprises songs and sketches drawn from Trish's extensive archive of 4-track tapes and mini discs. The recordings lay the groundwork for what would have been Broadcast's 5th album. Kind of thought it would be the 6th. Yeah, anyway, offering a window into Trish and James' creative process during the post-Tender Buttons period from 2006 to 2009. And the reason why this album did not happen is because Trish Keenan died unexpectedly in 2011 from pneumonia contracted as a result of H1N1, which was, I believe, also called the swine flu back then. I'll talk about that in this episode. But yeah, and then the second release, available September 28th of this year, is called Distant Call, Collected Demos 2000 to 2006. And that, in contrast to Spell Blanket, is a collection of early demos of songs that would subsequently appear as finished productions on the albums Ha Ha Sound, Tender Buttons, and The Future Crayon. The album also includes 2 songs discovered by James after Trish's passing, Come Back to Me and Please Call to Book. These were her response to Broadcast's 2006 Let's Write a Song project, where fans were asked to submit lyrics on a postcard, which would then be worked into a finished song. I don't remember that. Also, can you imagine if this comes out and it was how would you even remember now what the lyrics were on that postcard you sent in? Incredible. So yeah, Distant Call is a closing of the door on Broadcast and will be the last release from the band. You can pre-order those at warp.net. In this episode, I also focus on the work with Intro, the London-based design studio, Ghostbox Records, independent work also for Stereolab. Plus, as a bonus, it's Julian House adjacent, but not related directly. I tell in this episode the origin story of Cliff, Stereolab's cartoon mascot. You know him, you love him. Old finger gun. And then also, speaking of releases for 2024, out now, Switched On Volumes 1 through 5. There's a new anthology CD box set featuring lots of Cliff and designs by Julian House. So there's the connection. And yes, all of them, I believe, are also available on vinyl. There he is. Old Cliff. So this is my way of celebrating the spirit of Broadcast, the ghost of Broadcast, by re-releasing this episode. and celebrating all things Julian House related. But first, quickly, before I get into the full episode, I just wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy the show, please share with other vinyl and design freaks. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm at _DesignFreaks Podcast and also DesignFreaksPodcast.com. I have some really cool and fun interviews coming up. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. As usual, for other really fun music-related shows, check out ruinousmedia.com.
All right, come on, let's go. Let's talk about Julian House.
So, Julian House is one of my favorite sort of art-centric designers of all time. I am obsessed with a few of his projects in particular, so I'm going to go over that. I'm going to go over mostly Stereolab, Broadcast. I'm going to talk about the origin of Cliff, the little cartoon guy that Stereolab used for Duophonic and for their 7 inches, and the origin of that. And then also I want to talk about some of the other stuff he did for Can. The Lost Tapes, the Can Sacrilege tribute record, the live box set, and most recently, the singles. I just want to, talk about this wonderful artist and designer. And I want to I normally start out with a little bio and then kind of go into the projects that are my faves. So first of all, Julian House is a British graphic designer and musician, mostly known for his pulpish. And I've always wondered, what is pulp? So it is a term, it's a paper term referring to the pulpy, cheap paper, like newsprint type paper. And here I got this official sort of explanation from vintagelibrary.com. Thank you. It says the term originated from the magazines of the first half of the 20th century, which are printed on cheap pulp paper and published fantastic, escapist fiction for the general entertainment of the masses. So in House's own words, he says, the pulp end of things, which still informs me today as much as classic design, strange old vinyl LPs, paperback books, found ephemera. And in the same interview, he named a bunch of artists that influenced him. Peter Saville, of course. We had an episode on Peter Saville. I believe it was episode 2. Saul Bass, Max Ernst, William S. Burroughs, a few others, including H.P. Lovecraft and Lewis Carroll. So I'll get more into the aesthetics of each individual project in just a little bit. But in addition to all that kind of layered collage-based cover artwork that he made independently, he also worked with Intro, which is a London-based design direction company. They're sort of like high concept. He collaborated with Broadcast, beautiful visual representation of their music, Stereolab, Primal Scream, and then with Intro, they also created covers for Oasis, The Prodigy, and Razorlight. He also collaborated in the film Berberian Sound Studio, so he created the title sequence, the poster. So it's a movie about a creepy sound studio. So this is from the introuk.com website, and this is what they say about his involvement with the film.
A world that requires all your magic powers.
Oh, grazie.
Crazy man.
Julian House was originally approached by director Peter Strickland, a fan of his work, to design posters and recording studio ephemera for art department use with his film, Berberian Sound Studio. Julian then suggested the idea of a credit sequence for the film within the film. Interesting. And then this is Peter Strickland saying he instantly knew what was needed for the film and often led the way, pushing the design aspect more in the direction it had to go in. He had the idea of coming up with a fake title sequence for the film within the film, which I thought was brilliant. House envisioned the fake title sequence one of the most arresting and genuinely thrilling moments in the film. And then that was by Jason Wood, Electric Sheet Magazine. And then James from Broadcast says that the title sequence was a complete inspiration. The entire soundtrack for that movie was provided by Broadcast, came out in 2013. So as a musician, he performs and composes under the name Focus Group.
Clear?
He also is the co-founder of the music label Ghostbox. Busy much? Clearly, he's very accomplished. He's done so many different cool things. Cool cinema, music, design, all the different avenues. So starting with Broadcast, if you're not familiar with Broadcast, the music is beautiful. I wrote down it's haunting, it's psychedelic, it's weird, slightly disturbing, dark, ominous, but also pretty. They're from Birmingham, and they were formed in 1995, originally with Trish Keenan, R.I.P., sadly, and James Cargill. And she was the vocalist, beautiful voice of an angel, keyboards and guitar, and James played bass. Unfortunately, Trish Keenan did pass away on January 14th of 2011. She was 42. She had complications with pneumonia after contracting H1N1. So if you remember, that was like what we thought was going to be a pandemic. It's really sad. It says here that Cargill, the sole remaining member, said in a 2011 interview with Under the Radar that a new Broadcast album was in the works, featuring vocals recorded before her death. And later said Trish left a lot of tapes, 4 tracks and stuff. I've been going through those. It's difficult. I'm connected to it at the same time. It's wonderful, but I'm also feeling a sense of loss. The next thing I release with Trish on it will be more like a monument and a tribute to her rather than this obsessive thing I used to have about making albums. And then it says on the Wikipedia page, as of 2021, however, the album has not been released. So let's all watch out for that. Can't wait. I hope it does happen, and it'll be amazing, I'm sure. My favorite album is probably the Ha Ha Sound from 2003. And just from that album, I would have to say my favorite song would be Man Is Not a Bird. And I've always noticed the drumming, like they've always had, not always, but from the beginning, the first record was a little bit more minimal and a little bit more experimental. And by that second record, I started to notice like, wow, the drumming is incredible. And so on that record, it was Keith York and Steve Perkins. And then that record was released in 2000, I believe, on Warp Records. And then by 2003, they released the Ha Ha Sound. And when I heard the song Man Is Not a Bird, I was like, who is this hot shot on the drums? Incredible. His name's Neil Bullock. And if you go to his website, he uses the New Balance logo, which really cracked me up when I saw that for his initials. So anyway, he's like this drumming prodigy, started drumming at the age of 8. He was in some big band that toured with Chuck Berry, apparently. So that's an incredible record, the Ha Ha Sound, and the artwork for it. I can't separate the two in my mind. They go together so well. It's definitely a lot of halftone, collage. There's a motion to the artwork. There's just so much texture and gritty, grainy. Paper was cut up sloppily and just placed in the perfect places. The overall movement of the design is moving in a spiral coming outward toward the viewer. There's a splatter type of effect, and the typography. It changed my mind about what design could be when I saw Julian's work, because it's not even like childish, but it is painterly or I don't primitive. I don't know. There's something very expressionist about the typography. It's not overthought. The letters are recognizable, but there's nothing formal about it. And there's definitely this white, black, and orange sort of color story happening that I love. After that record, they also collaborated. Well, the noise made by people also, that was, I couldn't stop staring at that record because of the yellow. It's got a yellow field in the background, and then it looks like there's typesetting, like a old-fashioned typewriter at the top where it says broadcast, the noise made by people, almost like it's being filed away in an office, like an old office. And because the music is so reminiscent of the 60s, I got the feeling of like dusty file cabinets. The type itself, it looks like paper that's been cut up and just like kind of thrown down or placed haphazardly. There's photographs inside the letters. It's crazy. There's a red stripe typewriter, reminiscent little dashes. I don't know. I'm over explaining, but you just have to see it for yourself. It's very much what the album sounds like. And then you have similar styles with the Pendulum single, and that was from the album Ha Ha Sound with the exact same lettering style where he reused the broadcast that he used for the entire LP, an eyeball. And this color story is different. It's more like a cool color, blue and sort of a weird slate gray. Things are coming in and out of focus, which is something he does in the Berberian Sound Studio title sequence 2. I love that. Then we get to Tender Buttons. I was talking about drumming before. This is the album where they went full electronic. I love it because I love everything they do. Definitely different take on the cover where it's photograph based. The word tender is backwards. You know, there's sort of a mirror. What's a reflection and what's real? Then we have amazing. The Broadcast and the Focus Group investigate witch cults of the radio age. This was a collaboration, a musical and design collaboration between Julian House and Broadcast. Beautiful, witchy, spooky. It's almost like dark fairy tales. The songs are really short, so it's like a book of fairy tales. So this was released by Warp on October 27th, 2009. So what I've read about this record is that it's sort of like they wanted to combine their shared inspirations from the 1960s. So the BBC soundtracks, pulp science fiction, Europop, occult, witchy stuff, jazz. And so this was their first full-length musical collaboration. And I love how they kind of piece things together. Obviously I like to piece audio together. And it's kind of drawn from horror movies. They take samples from like nursery rhymes, creepy stuff, just sound effects. It says here when I was reading about it, like a long-lost mantra-like ritual from some faraway place 100 years ago. It creates a dynamic, haunting, but still pleasant mood, which is what makes it so thrilling. Yeah, I agree. And that was from Vice. I absolutely love it. I would suggest if you haven't heard it, put some headphones on, turn the lights off, and close your eyes and see where it takes you. Okay, getting to his work with Stereolab. They are an English-French avant-pop band. I mean, look, I don't want to read everything from articles, but I can't say it any better than this. They were formed in London in 1990. They were led by the songwriting team of Tim Gain and Letitia Saudier. There's something very vintage, sweet about it, but it's also really heavy. It's heavy music. And there's like feedback. There's different influences from all over the world. It's been called post-rock. It's something that's really hard to explain. If you could explain Stereolab, they wouldn't need to make the records. Like, just listen to it. And sadly, I don't think I have permission to play it in the podcast. Go buy their albums. Order those records from the Duophonic website, please. Okay, so Julian House did an amazing job, again, of visually capturing the band with design, so much so that I also have a hard time separating the two in my mind. When I think about Stereolab, I think about those album covers, the red and green, or the blue and green, the color combos, the way that they went all in on a library look. I love every part of their aesthetic. So anyways, the thing I really want to talk about is, okay, so Julian House didn't create this, but I came upon this Dangerous Minds article, and it was kind of circulating a few years ago. But if you didn't know this, it's a fun fact that the band's Cliff logo, it's the little cartoon guy they used for a bunch of their 7-inches, for Duophonic Super 45s, and I believe they used it for the early stuff as like their label logo. That little guy with the finger gun was taken from the comic strip Der Toglich Finger by Anton Holtz Portman. I think Stereolab named him Cliff because he had probably no name. He was just like kind of a symbolic figure. He was taken from a Swiss political comic from 1969. He's a figure of the establishment who's eventually shot by the forces of the revolution. Pang, like the Stereolab song, they took the little character from this little, and I'm going to post, of course, I post all the visual stuff I talk about, most of it on my website, DesignFreaksPodcast.com, and on my Instagram. And it's a 6-panel comic with the little figure, and each panel changes a little bit. So it starts where the Cliff guy is pointing it at the viewer. So it's that hard to do, like Uncle Sam Wants You hand, if anyone has as much trouble drawing hands as I do, which is why everyone wears creepy kitchen gloves now in my drawings. It's the figure pointing directly at the viewer. And at first it's a normal finger with the fingernail. The next panel shows that there's a hole in it. The panel after that shows that there's a larger hole in the finger. Now there's a scope on the end. The panel next to that is now the hand is turning into a gun. The panel after that, it's fully a gun with chambers. What do you call it? The barrel? I don't know. The last one is the explosion. And it's really cute. It's like a Peter Mac style multi-cloud, like stripy cloud explosion. And then below it, somebody went ahead and translated the text that's within each panel. And it says, well, so you are an upright person. You love peace and quiet, law and order. You have worked over 20 years with the same company. Your boss likes you. You have never been criticized, never any complaints. You play cards. You read the Neue Zürcher Zeitung, which I looked up. It's a Swiss German language daily newspaper. You believe in God and belong to the shooting club. You're a lieutenant in the army. About time you were bumped off. So I guess it's like leftist propaganda is what I'm gathering. And then it says, as you can see, the image of the grinning face hardly changes, but the accusing finger slowly mutates into a loaded pistol, which goes off, pang, in the last panel. So Gain calls Cliff the youthful judge, jury, and executioner representing the 1968 generation, staunchly opposed to militarism, conformity, bourgeois values, and so forth. They use the final panel where the explosion's happening for Pang, for obvious reasons, because that's where the explosion happens. They occasionally use the first panel with the naked finger. Okay, so then the article supplies all the different variations of Cliff that Stereolab went through over the years, and it's really cool. I'm definitely going to post all these and the original comic. It's really fun to see what they were able to do with color combos and just how they use that character. It's so funny. And I remember seeing this character and not really looking at it that closely. And I didn't realize he had sideburns. I thought that whatever that was, I thought his ears were his shoulders because his neck is so distorted. And then now that I look clearly, there's a shirt collar underneath, but I thought his shoulders were his feet. And you'll know what I'm talking about if you look. So he was used for the Super Electric 10-inch from 1991, the Super 45 10-inch from the same year, Switched on Comp 1992, Switched on Comp Brazilian reissue. There's a different color combo, really cool. I love all their color combos. The Stereolab Lo-Fi 10-inch from 92, the Harmonium Farfisa 7-inch from 92, then a really cool, very high vibration saturation color combo for the Light That Will Cease to Fail 7-inch on pink vinyl from 1992. I really wish I had all these, by the way. This would be such a great collection to have all the Cliff, to have the whole Cliff collection. The Light That Will Cease to Fail 7-inch on yellow vinyl from 92. And then the Pang record from 93 with the Explosion. This looks like they made a stencil. And then the Stereolab French Disco 7-inch from 93. They used multiple Cliffs. Then they used the regular finger Cliff for John Cage Bubblegum 7-inch. Great song, by the way. It goes on, folks. Just take a look. And then in 98, for the Stereolab sampler, they started using that kind of futuristic lettering with Cliff. So both of them. So anyways, fun fact about that little guy. You know, Julian House has done a ton of great work for Stereolab. Probably my favorite design for them would have to be Margarine Eclipse. I mean, it is just delicious. All I have to say is layers, textures, shapes, the color orange. It fills me with joy. Okay. You know, lastly, I want to talk about something that I didn't realize he did until recently. And these are records I have. First, the Can Sacrilege album that Intro, the design company, designed the packaging for through Mute Records. And I was so excited when this came out because I couldn't imagine being able to cover a Can song. Like, what are you going to do, a remix? And yes, there were remixes, but some of it's dated. I've listened to it again. Some of it's still great. Sonic Youth did a cover of Spoon. Uncle did Vitamin C. Then let's see, Future Days was done by Blade Runner. Let's see, Pete Shelley did Father Cannot Yell. And Brian Eno covered the song Noom, Pnoom. And I thought this was a gatefold, but it wasn't. It's a 3LP release, but it's nice packaging anyway. The cover's a photo of these light boxes, sort of a reel-to-reel recorder of some sort. But anyway, the information is in the light boxes, and then each record inside it sort of acts as an insert with the inner sleeve. So on the record with the Brian Eno song, he writes, "Dear Canites, I spent days working on this project, practically a whole week. I'm disappointed with my results. I thought I'd be able to make a brilliant new take on the things you did." Really? Why? JK. But he found it to be very difficult, blah, blah, blah. He goes on and on about how difficult it was. Of course, you know, Lee Ronaldo, Sonic Youth. Anyway, there's a bunch of interesting artists here, and it's great packaging that Intro did. The next record would be the Lost Tapes, and this would be the signature Julian House collage with layers. This specifically kind of makes me think of a library. There's like a card catalog feel to it. There's, it looks like there's Sharpie on sort of a paper bag, but just composed really well. And on the back, there's typewriter on little pieces of paper with tape and just stamps and all kinds of layering going on. It's really, really pleasing to look at. And then there's like sort of a sound wave type of imagery on the center labels on the records. Definitely love the packaging more than all the music, to be honest. I love Can. And then the last one that I'll talk about that I don't have is the Can singles. It has everything: spoon, mushroom, turtles have short legs, all those, vitamin C, all the hits, and really nice typography. It's very simple, black and white with a pattern. I believe it's embossed with a kind of a varnish on the actual record. Could be wrong. Could be making that up. Could be wanting it to be embossed. Anyway, okay, just to wrap it up. Julian House, amazing designer, artist, musician, and who knew he directed this title sequence. He's done video work. It's just upsetting how talented this person is. And I would highly recommend that you check out his other work and his music. He was a huge inspiration to me. He's one of the people I have to be conscientious not to rip them off, because so much of his work is why I became a designer in the first place. And it made such a huge impression on me. So check out ghostbox.co.uk to see their catalog of work. Definitely retro. There's some Swiss design, but it's also irreverent. It's also punk in the best way. And then go to intro-uk.com and check out what he's done with Intro. Buy all those Cliff records. Try to find those on Discogs. And thank you for listening to episode 30 _final V5 _final for real _FML.PSD.
Goodbye.